I'm here in Easton, Maryland today, and Easton's a very historic colonial town on the Eastern Shore. Now, back during the time when Maryland was a colony, our capital was in Annapolis, and that's where all the law was enacted. All the courts, all law enforcement sort of was at a hub there in Annapolis. There's a need to have a place on the Eastern Shore to have a courthouse and enact law there. And so this spot was chosen to build a courthouse, and it became known as the Talbot Courthouse, and later Easton, probably because it was the eastern capital of Maryland. So Easton has a lot of spooky stories, lots of historical figures, and many, many ghosts, including ghosts in this courthouse. So let's take a walk and find out more about Easton. Hey, Fred. One of the most famous Easton ghost stories is the story of the Avalon Theater that you see behind me. A former owner said that he and a colleague were in the theater doing inventory at the end of the year. The doors were all locked. They heard the elevator door ding. The doors opened and out walked a woman dressed in white. She turned, looked at them, turned around, and walked straight through the double doors without opening them, the doors that went into the theater. And they say today that elevator is haunted, that even in the wee hours of the morning when people at the staff are still there after a show, they'll hear the ding, ding, and the elevator's moving, no one's on it. At night, during the day, off hours, on hours. It seems that the elevator is possessed by something. Oddfellows Hall, haunted elevator. The old hospital, haunted elevator. Old jail, another haunted elevator. What is with these ghosts on the elevators? Another haunted site. This is Magazine Alley. Everybody loves a graveyard, and in Easton they have an awesome graveyard. It has nearly 10,000 graves, the oldest going back to 1790. And one of the more notable people buried here is this guy, John Franklin Baker, also known as Home Run Baker. He was admitted to the Baseball Hall of Fame and nicknamed Home Run Baker, not because of the number of home runs that he hit, but because of the timeliness of those home runs. Because in a World Series game against the New York Yankees in 1911, Home Run Baker hit a home run at the very end of two separate games, winning those games and taking his team, the Philadelphia Athletics, to the World Series as winners. Another well-known character in this cemetery is this guy here, Daniel Martin, 20th governor of the state of Maryland. Daniel was born in Talbot County on a plantation known as the Wilderness, which is the site of another famous ghost story called the Kissing Ghost, but that's another story for another day. Now, Daniel became governor and served a second term, and during his second term in July of 1831, he didn't feel well. So he returned to Talbot County to his plantation, the Wilderness, and he took to bed. This was on a Friday, and he had a dream. He dreamed that his deceased mother came to him and said, "Son, you will be called home at noon." Well, it scared him, but he didn't die on Saturday. But when he went to bed Saturday night, he had the same dream. You will be called home at noon. Didn't die the next day, but don't you know, Sunday night, the third night in a row, he had a dream that his deceased mother said, "You will be called home at noon." And that Monday, July 11th, 1831, at age 50, Daniel Martin was riding his horse on the plantation, and he dropped dead at noon. And then there are the graves of little children called from this life far too early. Like this grave here, that's the grave of little Willie Hayward, who according to his tombstone, died as a result of a cruel accident. In 1880, little Willie Hayward was gored by a bull at age 4. One of the greatest things about this graveyard, or should I say cemetery, do you all know the difference between a graveyard and a cemetery? A graveyard is in a yard of a church or a house. A graveyard is a yard, where a cemetery is just a place where they bury people. And this is a cemetery with over 10,000 graves, as I mentioned before. In this cemetery, there is a healing tree, and I'm standing in front of it. My old friend, the Easton yew. Yew trees were believed by the old ancient pagans to be present in both this world and the eternal world at the same time. So they're kind of a really thin place. And they say if you put your hand up close to this tree, you can almost feel its healing power. This tree is my old friend. How you been? Yeah, I don't get to see you much. I don't do this tour anymore. Kids are good. Kids are good. Haunted. So come to Easton. But mind yourself when you get on the elevator. You never know what might be on there with you.